Hey, what's going on, everybody? Christian Ballard of Ballard Sports Media coming at you with an interview today with Joe Hastings. And we're talking college football, we're talking recruiting, we're talking signing day, but more so want to get insight on Alabama. And again, we got Joseph Hastings on. How you doing?
Man, Chris, I'm doing excellent today. It's a little bit of a weird time right now with recruiting just because of how crazy things change from one day to the next. But just monitoring it, always on this right here, always on my phone. Just keeping track of everything, man. Hope everything's been well on your end.
Yeah, absolutely. And happy holidays too, with the holidays coming up. And,
Mhm.
I'll say this Joe and I actually met at the Peter Woods commitment a few months back at Thompson High School, where Peter Woods chose Clemson. Have you heard anything on Peter Woods since then? I mean, I guess from what I see on social media, he's sticking to Clemson, right?
Yeah, Peter's been really solid with Clemson. Hasn't entertained, even doing an in-home visit with Alabama. He said that the only in-home that he has set up is with Clemson, and he's kind of kept true on his word with the Tigers there. And honestly, looking back at when you cast your mind back to the spring and you talk about Kelby Collins, Peter Woods, you expected at least one of those two to be in Alabama's class, and the fact that both appear on their way to signing to other programs, and not only that. Alabama is not going to get an official visit from either one of them unless there's a crazy last minute surprise. That's something that if you told me back in March that Alabama wouldn't have landed either and that both wouldn't have taken official visits to the program, I would have been surprised. They both had their reasons for choosing the schools they chose, and even though Alabama appears on their way to missing on signing on them, they've been able to assemble a pretty good defensive line class that could potentially become great if you add James Smith and another D lineman to the class. So yeah, if just to answer your question, seems like Peter Woods is locked in with Clemson though.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wish him the best of luck. But we missed out on Peter Woods. But this week, we picked up a big guy in Keon Keeley. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, so Keon Keeley, somebody that I submitted a prediction for Alabama after he decommitted from Notre Dame on August 17th. I actually included him in my Alabama mock class in April. There was a lot of speculation, even going back then, that the Crimson Tide were in a good position with him. It really started with his January Junior Day visit that he took to Tuscaloosa, and the program was in a really good spot with him since then. He ended up taking the visit for the Champions Cookout in late July. That eventually led to his decommitment from Notre Dame. He took an official visit to Alabama in October, then an unofficial for the Iron Bowl, and on November 26th. So everything was really shaping up for Alabama, and they were able to pull off a big win over Ohio State and Florida too. And when you talk about Keon Keeley, you're getting somebody who's very explosive off the edge. Someone who can fill in at that jack position. That Will Anderson, he's obviously going to be leaving a big hole there with his departure or presumed departure for the NFL draft. Bringing in somebody like Keon Keeley and with the talent they already have at that jack position, it's really big for Alabama to keep reloading at that position. It's a very versatile position in that defense. Keon is somebody who's 6'6", 245 pounds, very well filled out for this stage in his career. Obviously everyone's going to have to do some sort of transition, to the strength and conditioning program in college, but Keon's not really somebody that you look at and say, wow, he has a lot of work to do. He's pretty filled out for the most part. Like I mentioned before, very dominant off the edge, rushes the passer well, has an array of spin moves and pass rush moves that he can put together. Plays very well with his hands too. I got to see him in person back in September, and he really looked like the total package. Had multiple sacks. I believe he, had a strip fumble too. So he's just a very explosive player, and the number 3 overall prospect in the country for a reason. He's the highest rated non-quarterback in this class, so a massive addition for Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say? This is a guy that was committed to Notre Dame for over a year, Keon Keeley. When a guy is committed for so long to a team and then he decommits, for Alabama to be the team to go get him, what does it say about the program that they're able to flip a guy like that?
I mean, they're really able to go into any state and recruit anybody that they want. You look at what they've done in Florida, landed Keon Keeley, the number one player in the state, Richard Young, one of the top players in the state. They went into Georgia, landed three of the top four players in Georgia. Went into Louisiana, landed one of the top players in Eli Holstein there. They have commitments from the top two JUCO players in the country. I mean, Alabama is just, no matter the circumstances, Alabama is able to go into other states to be a part of other commitments. You look at flip targets like Caden Proctor and Luke Has that they're in pursuit of right now. They're pushing hard for them. They've already pulled off some flips in this cycle. So Alabama can just get it done in a wide variety of ways. They're very versatile, as a program in terms of how they recruit. They recruit transfers, they recruit JUCO players, they recruit top blue chip prospects in other states. They're not beholden to just one aspect of recruiting and doing that very well. They kind of do everything really well. So, yeah, to answer your question, they stuck with it with Keon Keeley. They got him on campus multiple times while he was committed to Notre Dame. And honestly, I think you can pretty much say that they're the reason why he decommitted from Notre Dame. It's not a coincidence that he took a visit to Ohio State and to Florida in March, didn't decommit, but he took one to Alabama in late July, decommitted less than 3 weeks later. I don't think that was a coincidence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Alabama is definitely that program that, once you get on that campus, you get a feel for it. You get this certain vibe, you get a feeling. And it probably won't work for every recruit, but it does happen a lot.
Yeah, you talk about it not working for every recruit. I mean, that's the funny thing about this class here. You've got Peter Woods and Kelby Collins that they missed out on in state. You would have thought that those two would have been the sure things. How many times they've been on campus, being fans of Alabama growing up, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look at who they landed a state over in Georgia and Justice Haynes, a UGA legacy. All the predictions were in favor of Georgia in that recruitment. You live about an hour away from Athens. You thought that he would have been a sure thing to Georgia. He ended up going to Alabama. You thought Peter Woods would have been a sure thing to Alabama. He went to Clemson. It's just kind of
Yep.
been a little bit of a weird recruiting cycle in terms of just kind of expecting the unexpected, especially with NIL being introduced into it all. But yeah, like you said, Alabama, they're just that program. They can kind of do whatever they want to on the recruiting trail, and they have the number one class for a reason.
Yeah, so you look at this class in 2023, Alabama has 25 different players committed right now. It's huge.
Yeah.
But they got 25 players from 13. That's right, 13 different states: Bama, Florida, Georgia, Texas. I could go down the list. For Coach Saban to go all over the map, and we know we see it all the time, but what does it say about the culture that you think has been built in Tuscaloosa that he's able to go out of the state and not just to one state? I mean, he's gone to maybe 5 different states in this class.
Yeah, I mean, look at Connecticut even, and landing Olaus Alinen, a Finland native. It really kind of just goes to show that the brand is national. It isn't, something that's in the southeast or anything like that. They can go into Connecticut, they can land, someone like Olaus Alinen. They can go into Texas, land Jalen Hale over the in-state Texas Longhorns, and then also Jordan Renaud as well. In the past, we've seen them go to California. I mean, you can even say that for earlier this year with getting Jermaine Burton to transfer. He's a California native. He had Bryce Young already in the fold. They recruit coast to coast. I mean, it's incredible. It's my first cycle covering Alabama. But it's just impressive to see how many different states they can go to and how much success they're having in each of those states. And even with California, this cycle, Raymond Polito, he's offensive lineman committed right now. So, yeah, no, just to answer your question there, it really goes to show how impressive this staff is, how on page they are with one another. That you can have an area recruiter recruiting a specific state, but then also having the position coach chip in and help out as well and do their thing. And sometimes the primary recruiter, being the area recruiter, is the one who played the biggest role in their recruitment. So yeah, this is just one of the best classes I've ever seen top to bottom, and I think it could get even better.
I think it could too. Absolutely. And, mentioned 25 different players, 13 different states, so many different positions. And I am one of the belief that every position matters in college football, in sports in general. Every player matters. Is there a certain group that you would say Alabama should focus on as we get ready for signing day, or one that they have focused on?
Yeah, you would have to look at cornerback. That is one. They have Jaleel Hurley, who's committed right now. Out of Florence, Alabama. But they could potentially add up to two more. They're focused on a group that features Desmond Ricks, a five-star, Damari Brown, a Miami legacy, who's strongly considering the Crimson Tide. You got Tyler Scott out of Mableton, Georgia. So you look at cornerback. That's a position that they'll need to fill. Defensive line. We've already talked about the misses of Peter Woods and Kelby Collins. I mean, I keep coming back to that because had one of those two been committed in this class, and then you land potentially James Smith too, I think the defense the whole perception of the class is taking up another level. I think those two misses were really noteworthy there, but defensive line is a big position of need, big position group of need. They're hoping to add James Smith, maybe Jordan Hall next week as well. He's got Alabama in his top four. So you look at those position groups; those are the ones that we're primarily paying attention to. You also have to look at inside linebacker because Quay Rousseau, he's somebody who can play that or rush outside the edge. Suntarian Perkins, the Ole Miss linebacker commitment. Inside linebacker, if you can get a second one, that would be ideal, especially after missing out on Arian Carter. So it's mainly on the defensive side of the ball, all three levels there: defensive line, linebacker, cornerback. Those are the main ones we're paying attention to heading into early signing period.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about they go over all over the map. It seems like they tackle all these different position groups, but I see, especially on defense, it's kind of weird how we've kind of transferred to this transition
Mhm.
to like an offensive league in college football, where you have to throw the ball, you got to have quarterback play, and that's the number one pick in the draft. And Alabama's still focusing in on defense in this class, heavy on defense. Um, Nick Saban's always been a defensive guru. One of the key guys out there, though, I look at is Kirby Smart, and I just kind of shake my head at what he's built because it's incredible. How is Alabama in this class? Like, do you think there's some motivation with a team like Georgia out there that's helping them recruit on defense?
I mean, it's a priority. It's an area of priority. You look at the Tennessee game going up. I know it was at Knoxville, and I know the Georgia Tennessee game was in Athens, but Alabama allowed 52 points to Tennessee, and they literally could not stop Jalen Hyatt for anything. Like Hendon Hooker to Jalen Hyatt, just it was unstoppable. So you look at that game, and then you look at what Georgia did to them a few weeks later, holding them to just 13 points. I mean, honestly, they probably wouldn't have even reached 13 points had Georgia maintained that high level of intensity throughout the entire game. They really held them down for the most part throughout that contest, and you just kind of see how different those two are. In terms of the defense where they're at, and then LSU allowing 32 points to LSU. It's just that's not the typical Alabama defense that you're accustomed to seeing, especially since there's talent there. And you look at the class that they put together now, it should be able to address those issues. You bring in Keon Keeley. You're hoping to bring in James Smith, Quay Rousseau. Those are two more 5 stars. Then Caleb Downs, who I think is the top high school player in the country, regardless of position. So you've got him at safety. You got Jaleel Hurley, top 5 cornerback, potentially Desmond Ricks, a 5-star cornerback that they're hoping to add next Thursday. You look at that and you're thinking, man, this could be one of the best defensive classes that Alabama has put together under Coach Saban's tenure. So you're absolutely right. But then you look at the offensive side of the ball, and it's been spectacular. 2 of the top running backs in the country, 2 top 10 quarterbacks in the country, a 4 wide receiver class that is spectacular. Malik Benson just earned his 5-star rating on On3. The offensive line is solid. They're hosting Caden Proctor for a visit this weekend. Top to bottom, it's just a really, really, really strong class. But yes, you're right. The defense is definitely an emphasis for them down this home stretch.
Yeah, and I was just fixing to ask you the final question, to kind of close things out here because I don't want to keep you too long. But the overall thoughts on the 2023 class, I think it, it'd be awesome to get every single commit to Alabama, and it's possible that could happen. Like you mentioned, there's some flips that could happen in there. How hard is it to do to maybe keep every single guy right now?
I think Justice Haynes, Caleb Downs, those are the two you know there was a lot of discussion about. They both visited elsewhere this season. Justice Haynes going to the Georgia Tennessee game, Caleb Downs going to that game, plus the Ohio State Michigan matchup as well. But both seem pretty solid with the Crimson Tide. They haven't given off the impression that they're close to flipping. You obviously have to watch out for Tony Mitchell. He's taking an official visit to Texas A&M this weekend. We know that Auburn's in the race there too, so he'll definitely be one to pay attention to. But that's something that you're going to have to watch out for as well. Just are they going to be able to hold on to all 25, nonetheless, be able to add some big time talent next week too. So no, I think the finish can be spectacular if you get James Smith, Quay Rousseau. Both appear to be trending toward Alabama on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine. Desmond Ricks, a five-star cornerback. Alabama's in his top three. The official visit this past weekend went really well. There's just a ton of talent that can be added. Maybe Damari Brown. They're hoping to still pull off some flips on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, I'm still kind of reserving my judgment for this class until everyone is signed, because until pen is put to paper, you just don't know nowadays. But it's looking like a very, very strong class. I would be shocked if it isn't the number one class when it's all said and done. They have a pretty good lead over Georgia and should be able to increase that lead. But just top to bottom, I mean, outside of maybe a couple of misses that you think Alabama should have had, I think they've done excellent in this class.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you so much for doing this with me. We look forward to signing day and definitely want to keep in touch with you if anything comes up.
Chris, thank you so much for reaching out, man. Look forward to doing this again.
Awesome. Thank you. Y'all be sure to hit that thumbs up. Check out Joe on Twitter and